welcome to the show, What Will Happen? In the second episode of the show, we will be discussing geopolitical situation in Eastern Europe between Turkey and NATO countries. If you recall, in the first episode of our show, we discussed the US and India relationship, and in the context of the US and India relationship, the conflict between China and India at Ladakh. So our show is a geopolitical show hosted by me, Huston, and our analyst and expert of the show is Mr. Jamil Ahmed, former ambassador of Pakistan and a long-standing diplomat at the United Nations. Mr. Jamil Ahmed, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me once again. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So, Mr. Jamil, if you remember, we had a lengthy discussion on U.S. role in with India and its new developing alliance and India-China conflict and where Pakistan stands. This is, I think, the second geopolitical issue which is brewing in this world right now is between Turkey and its rest of its NATO allies. It's very confusing, the role of NATO, what it's doing with Turkey and what's happening with Turkey. Turkey is fighting lone battle to secure its border with Iraq, with the Kurdish rebel, and to its southeast with Syria from different terrorist organizations like Daesh and other. But it seems to be fighting a lone battle. Since at least 4 or 5 years, Turkey is militarily engaged in the conflict. So my question is, Turkey is a NATO ally. Why don't we see the same support from NATO for Turkey for its campaigns to secure its border, whether it's against Daesh, whether it's against Kurdish rebels who are looking to carve their own country out of Turkey, Iran, and Iraq. So what is Turkey doing? And then we'll move on to Turkey's recent moves of converting Higa Sofia into a mosque. But let's discuss what is going on with Turkey in the last 5-6 years and its NATO allies, especially resurgent Turkey, which is resurgent with Erdogan now.
That's right. Turkey with Erdogan has now taken a new shape and new dimension, which is a politics of right-wing politics, as compared to what was happening previously. And Turkey was totally in a European style, a secular country, and everyone would mind their own business. They would not be focusing more on the right-wing politics. So that change is definitely there, but at the same time, Erdogan had brought a lot of prosperity. In fact, the Turkey was under debt more than $10 billion once Erdogan had taken over. And within first 2 years, 3 years, he cleared all the debts. And he also asked IMF that if they want, Turkey would be contributing and giving loan to other countries through the IMF. So he definitely brought prosperity, and that's why he became quite popular, regardless of the fact that what strategy of politics he's practicing, Mr. Erdogan in Turkey, whether it's a right wing or whatever. But people, they got a relief. At the end of the day, a common person wants a roof on the head and also food to eat. So basically that started improving. It's a different thing that, again, the Turkish economy started deteriorating, and there are a variety of factors. So
my question, which brings us to the question, Erdogan, so do you think because of his good economic policies and during last 15 years of his or more of his tenure, a lot of right-wing liberals or seculars have joined Erdogan now? Would it be a right statement to make?
Yes, I would say he has gained a tremendous popularity among the population who have that pure mindset of right wing, and there is no harm in it. But the right wing, if it takes you towards more towards the stringent policies, which within the country starts bringing some divide, and outside the country start raising skepticism. So from that angle, everything starts affecting. And if you would see, the Turkish currency has gone down, the export has gone down last 3-4 years. So things have started deteriorating, and there are variety of factors. But I will first come to the fundamental question, which is very significant in the present day context of geopolitical situation in the world, and which is NATO attitude towards Turkey. Now, it doesn't surprise me, basically. I'll come back to Turkey situation later, but NATO attitude. First of all, what is NATO? Now, first, if we understand the NATO charter, we'll probably understand what are the obligations of NATO towards its members. So the charter was written and signed by the initial member countries, were 12 in 1949. And the basic purpose, and then other countries, they started joining them, Eastern Europe, Turkey, and so on. So it's almost about 30 countries now members of the NATO. NATO or any regional organization. NATO is a regional organization, like Shanghai Cooperation is a regional organization, like the ICO, the Islamic Cooperation Organization is regional cooperation. Likewise, there are so many regional organizations.
But NATO is a defense alliance.
But it comes under UN Charter. All these alliances, whether it's a defense alliance, economic alliance, social alliance, cultural alliance, if you make an alliance of any regional country or group of regional country, it comes under Chapter 8 of the United Nations Charter. And United Nations Charter, Chapter 8, gives you this authority and this privilege to the member states that they can group together and they can protect their interests.
That's what is the question is, why NATO is not effective in supporting Turkey in its campaign against Kurdish and in Syria.
Correct.
Against Daesh, and Turkey seems to be fighting a lone battle. Now it seems like Turkey is also involved in Libya as well, but that's another chapter. But so why NATO is not supporting?
That means the charter, Article 5 in the charter, basically that's the strength which gives to all the members of NATO, that any member who is threatened or attacked by any non-member of NATO, it would be deemed that it is a threat or attack against all the members, and action can be directed. That's Article 5. And because of Article 5 was never invoked during the entire Cold War. It could not be because there were two nuclear powers. Article 5 was invoked. The major example of Article 5 is Afghanistan, where NATO countries,
the whole NATO, and they went in.
And they invoked Article 5 because 9/11, they said that it's a attack in the US. That means Article 5 can be invoked because attack on any country means it is an attack on the members, and they can
has
take
Turkey
action.
requested invocation of Article 5 with the NATO members?
Yes. I'm coming on that. One more point I described on that previous one. And then this very article, which is Article 5 of NATO, it is strengthened, and it is given a strength by Article 51 of Charter of United Nations, Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is an implementing chapter. It says that any member who is attacked, individual members or a group of members who is attacked by any other member, the member who has been attacked has the right to defend itself. So the NATO takes the strength of Article 51 of United Nations, they retaliate, and then they inform the Security Council. And in the Security Council, there are the 3 members of the veto powers, except Russia and China, which is normally, they do not go by such things. So therefore, I was just giving you the perspective, how it becomes so significant. Now coming on that point, which is really, people would be very curious to hear, that in the first time, Turkey asked NATO that being a member, Turkish aircraft, which was on reconnaissance, the fighter jet, which was on reconnaissance, F-5, very advanced fighter jet, which was on the reconnaissance mission of radar checking, and it went on an international boundary. It only came for 5 nautical mile inside Syria, and it was hit by Syrian missile, right? There are the politicians of Turkey, they said that it's hit by the Russian missile or Russian warship which was there. So that was the allegation, but that was not investigated. So Turkey at that time asked the NATO to invoke Article 5 as its aircraft has been attacked by from the Syrian territory. Therefore, NATO should join with them to counter that. And NATO had a meeting, one meeting, second meeting, and they start. So your question, that point which you gave in your intro, that they actually did not come for the help of Turkey. And once we say for the help of Turkey, there has to be some background to it. There has to be some psyche behind it. There has to be some reason behind it. Now, obviously, you will not find these reasons point-wise anywhere, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you'll not find it. Basically, you have to read between the lines. Turkey tried initially to become the member of the European Union. Most of them are the member of the NATO also. And then there was a deal drawn and there was a delaying tactics. They were not. And the Turkish people were a very large segment of Turkish people thought that they'll become a member of EU. EU members, probably they never wanted that such a huge country, Muslim country, becomes a member. Now take that example to NATO. NATO has its interest. The powerful members of the NATO have this interest in Syria, right? So, and they were supporting Kurds against, although it's not related to this Article 5 directly here, but they were supporting some of the elements there in Syria. And with the help of
Bashar al-Assad.
Bashar al-Assad. Those elements were being supported there. With Russia definitely was supporting Bashar al-Assad straightway. So they did not come to confront with at that time, and they did not want Turkey to have an edge. And Turkey, they probably wanted to remain Turkey under pressure because they were utilizing the Kurds of Turkey for their own purposes.
So basically, we will, if we say in a short statement that NATO is playing a double game with Turkey, while Turkey being the member won't be wrong, because on one hand, it's supporting the groups which are against Turkey interests directly and attacking Turkey, like Kurds. And
I don't see the future of NATO with Turkey its member, because Turkey, it appears, would have to quit at some stage because Turkey is being pushed to align with the other bloc, which is Russia, China.
So this brings us to our next question. Since Turkey, as we expect, will not be a member, and Turkey is resurgent as well. So with the Turkey which we see is not 1935 Turkey, which just given up all its rights. So Turkey seems to be coming back to its Islamic roots. It used to be for 6,500 years would be the center power and throne of the Muslim world in form of Khilafat-e-Osmaniya. So do you think Turkey is connecting with the roots of Khilafat-e-Osmaniya more than its newfound secularism and leaving newfound secularism? And would it result in a direct conflict between NATO and Turkey in coming years? In the context that we know by 1923, the Bosphorus Agreement, I don't know the name of the exact agreement, but Bosphorus Agreement will come to an end. And all the waterways which is being used by the East European countries and Russia to transport oil through Bosphorus, transport all their goods and services through Bosphorus, will be under Turkish control, same as Suez is under Egyptian control, which is one of the most important trade route in the world. So do you think with Turkey having more leverage and its Islamic resurgence, like converting Higa Sofia back into mosque, do you think that the Turkey faces some imminent threats which will affect its sovereignty directly from west rather than east?
Turkey is not that small country. Turkey is a very strong militarily also, and Turkey nation is a homogeneous nation. So it would not be so easy for the West to take on the Turkey at this stage. I don't foresee that stage, but there would be this game of tug of war would go on, and this tug of war which is going on already, and Hagia Sophia mosque conversion at this point in time sends a different signal, although it has been done in accordance with the law of the sovereign country, which United Nations Charter also allows. And that is basically that the five judges of the apex court, the highest court of Turkey, they decided about it. They revoked the decree of 1934, in which, according to which decree, mosque was converted into museum. So
And
after
it was a
that,
direct decree by Kemal Atatürk, the
Kemal
founding
Atatürk, right?
father of
So
secular Turkey. So
quite right. But then it was obviously the matter was taken up by the present government or the government, and then that matter was to be decided according to the prosecution and according to the witnesses produced in the court. So that can be managed, I would say, and it was favorably managed. Now the question here is that it's a UNESCO heritage also, which has some bindings on Turkey. So Turkey, I think at later stages, subsequent stages, and even now, a portion of it is still, rather not a portion, the entire mosque is a Turkey should say that it's for the international visitor. They have no problem, international visitors, and as cultural value and heritage, they will continue that to happen. So how they handle is more important. If they handle it properly and maintain it as a cultural heritage of UNESCO, that would not give a signal which would be detrimental to the Turkish interest.
isn't it a hypocrisy from Alhambra to thousands of mosques in Spain, which were converted to cathedrals, and they are still standing cathedral? From Babri Mosque, nobody complains about it. It was broken down to the ground, and the top court of the India allowed. So just one mosque, and there's so much hues and cries. And it was a museum. It was not a cathedral at the time when it was converted to a mosque. Is it? Do we sense the dual standards over here?
Well, you see, in the world opinion, among the billions of people, it's not the way that we are discussing in a crystallized manner. It's normally the thoughts which travels, and the impression and the perception of various countries, what we call soft image of various countries, which is spread all over the world, which is known as people-to-people relation. And people-to-people relation around the world, it brings compulsion and it brings pressure on respective governments of those world to formulate and shape their policy in accordance with that. So it's not as simple. I would say that the world would only change its opinion or have started changing its opinion if the signal goes that it has the other the international visitors or international community, they are totally deprived of getting into it, which is not the case. In fact, even the Vatican, the Pope of Vatican, he did not, in fact, he said that he's pained. Mike Pompeo has given a statement. Russia is very mild on it at this point in time. And there were so many other countries. But your question about Alhambra and about Spain, in fact, it takes me to another point. And that point is basically that the diplomacy around the world, and it's a very interesting thing which people like myself have found, you know, in past thousands of years, it has revolved around directly or indirectly around the religion also. Now, so if you take the example of these mosques, whether Spain, the mosque conversion to cathedral and cathedral conversion into mosque during the Ottoman time, so so many things started happening because of that religious diplomatic work. So at this point in time also, again, Islam is a very strong religion and practiced by over a million, more than a million people around the world, so a billion. So these billion, more than a billion people, they matter a lot in this. And Erdogan is having a support of his own country, number one, and some Muslim countries have, including Prime Minister of Pakistan, is favored. Now the question here is that in United States, where you are sitting, or in UK, where I've been studying and I'm visiting, and so many other countries, you know, that even now while we are talking, the Muslim communities, they are buying the cathedral, they are converting into a mosque, buying the cathedral, converting into a mosque. So the tolerance level in these countries are much higher as compared to the tolerance level of South Asian countries, or for that matter, in this case, Turkey. So one has to enhance the tolerance level in this particular. There is a mosque, there is a cathedral in US, probably somewhere in Boston, close to Boston, where Muslim community did not find any space to offer their Jummah prayer, and they used to pray on a park, or they used to take permission for one of the roads. So the cathedral, they decided, the committee, that we will remodule our benches in such a way that the Muslims should come and pray there. Even today, last about 4 or 5 years, the Muslims, they offer their Jummah prayer in that cathedral, and the cathedral does its normal services and they facilitate. And once the Muslims, they come, and it's a full cathedral church, and then once the Muslim come, they try and cover some of the pictures there in the cathedral. So that's that
But
kind of an arrangement.
have you heard this happening in somewhere? So here is my take on it. United States is a different world. The fabric of the United States is by immigrants and real secular, and that's what the United States sticks to. So giving example of United States is not applicable for the Europe or Spain, where till 1960 you cannot have a religion, Muslim as your religion, till 1960, which is not so far. So I think Europe, Germany, France, they have a different set of values when it comes, and thus a different set of tolerance. Their tolerance cannot be compared with the tolerance in the United States.
That's right. Even UK has a good tolerance, and but my point here is the way Turkey is going to handle this, even after conversion, which is their right, and they have done a right thing. But if I go into the history, I can prove that they have done a very right thing. But basically, I would say that it depends the way they resonate the signals, and the way they resonate the signal would also have the perception around the world, and that will form and shape up the policies of those respective countries, and Turkey would not have resistance. But if they start doing other things also, coupled with it, and start supporting, like the way they are supporting one of the topmost organization, Muslim Brotherhood, all around the Gulf countries, so that is where they start having some resistance. Whether they are doing it as a geopolitical strategy, yes, I would say yes. Geostrategic strategy, I would say yes, because see what is happening in Libya. Turkish people are there, Russian people are there, and their Egyptians are there, and there's a lot of riffraff going on. See the example of Syria, and so many other examples. So therefore, I would say that it all depends the way other policies are introduced after that. So if the other policies are aligned, supporting some of the radical organization, for example, in that case, this matter would also crop up again. Otherwise, I don't think.
So basically, symbolically speaking, in the Muslim world, in the right wing of the Muslim world especially, the conversion of Higa Sofia to a mosque has been taken as a sign of renaissance, if I would say. I have seen a lot of famous anchors in different languages have encouraged it. Arab world, on the other hand, has taken it very negatively. We know Arab world is not, I don't know what they are remaining. So what do they represent? It's very hard to say. It's not hard to say. We know how they are.
They have aligned with the NATO countries, and they have aligned with the United States. The
Arab world, as Zulfikar Ali Bhutto said to the foreign minister of Egypt in 1960s, that when he was asked, what do you think about Arab League? And he said 0 multiplied by 0 is always 0.
That,
So,
and like OIC, you know, that's what it is.
and like OIC, yeah.
Yeah.
So moving on to our next section. So what will happen? We have come out with one thing, that we will do some predictions for next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years before we move from our segment. So the prediction of this segment for us is that I think Turkey in next 5 to 7 years will not be the part of NATO, and NATO countries, which are maybe in form of NATO or other, probably will occupy Turkey because of its resources and influence on Eastern Europe. That is the analysts saying a lot of the world, and the way the direction Turkey is going. I think Europe will not tolerate it. So Turkey must be ready. So this is just a prediction, and it's not a prophecy. It can be right or wrong, but everybody is saying that. The second thing, now we'll move on to our new fiasco between US and China. So on the US-China relationship, are the most critical relationship. It's like Soviet, Russia, and Western allies and US relationship of 90s, 70s, and 80s now. The Cold War is in full swing, so we can easily say that the Cold War is there. But the funny part of this Cold War is there is a lot of trade between the countries, and US is not sanctioning China. And China is still selling its goods and services all over US. So, and they're trying to decouple their economies, which will be a long process, years, 10 years minimum, if we can see any effective. So in the latest breath of this hot exchanges between China and US, the latest engagement we have seen in the form of Chinese consulate in Huston has been ordered to be shut down within 72 hours, which is unprecedented in diplomatic arena, even in countries like Pakistan and India, which has fought a lot of wars. From the era of the Cold War as well, we have not seen any consulate being shut down so abruptly, as far as my knowledge is concerned. Why did that happen? We have some information, which is, I'll share it with you, like why it happened effectively, but what are your views on this latest US move?
Interesting, but let me quickly, in just 2 sentences, make some comment of your previous predictions. I would only say that I'm only skilled and qualified to do the analysis. So I would agree with your prediction and my analysis that yes, but one point which I would like to add in that attacking Turkey in the coming future and coming 5, 6, 10 years doesn't seem to be possible and plausible, and it would not be because the blocks are being made. And like during the Cold War, the Russia or the US never reached to that threshold level, except for the behavior of Fidel Castro, that they had started fixing the missiles, Russian missiles, loaded with the nuclear weapons. And at that time, they had to call it off. So I don't see that Turkey, even while it leaves NATO at subsequent stages, if they don't get the support of NATO the way it is given in Article 5, then they would obviously, and then Russia would like that, and then China would like that, because China, Russia, both, they are in, and there are other countries, they are aligning with them. Coming back now on that point of the China and US,
so
you are very
that's
right.
Why towards the end of last 2 questions of our show loops back to the first part of our show, which is Turkey and why Turkey, and the last part is the hot conflict between Russia, China, and the US through the proxies. So we'll try to sum it up over the last section of the show. Coming back to US, China, and closure of US Chinese consulate in Houston, Texas. So,
yeah, these in the diplomatic world and in the diplomatic movements of countries, these are taken as very serious. These are one of those last few last steps which are taken by the countries of closing down the missions. Consulate is a territory of those respective countries, and they have a protection. It is as if China is there. Chinese
Yes.
sovereignty is there in that.
Yes.
So closing it down and labeling some allegations and very serious allegations, and then tit for tat. And China also. Normally, that's how it happens. Reciprocity. If you close the embassy of some country, then the other country immediately tries to reciprocate it the same way. So since US did it in Houston, and they leveled the allegation of spying and allegation of intruding into their system and stealing the research work of COVID-19. So all those allegations were labeled that this consulate was the place from where people were, scientists and other hackers were doing something. So that was just an allegation. And allegations in the international and diplomatic world, unless it's proved, people would only hear that and start aligning with each other's country. They already have their allies. So that's one. Then China immediately asked the US to close down their consulate in Chengdu. So therefore, that is tit for tat. But the next step becomes serious, and that becomes serious. Then they start shutting down their embassy, which I don't see that happening, because as you yourself in your comment pointed out, they are so much intertwined interest, economic interest, that it would be disastrous for particularly United States, and both China also would feel some pinch of it, not as much that they can not go to that level. But I think that they will settle down something soon with this by taking some measures. US would take some measures, and China would give some arguments. So
the rumors in the media is that some high value Chinese spy or Chinese asset, which happened to be US citizen, FBI was after that person. It happens to be a woman, according to the rumors in media. And she took asylum in that consulate in Houston. And they want to arrest her, so they revoked the whole status of the consulate in 72 hours. So in 72 hours, they will able to, maybe 72 hours has already passed, in fact. So they were might have able to go in themselves and arrest who they want to arrest. So this is the rumor which is being circulated in the media, how true, which seems plausible. Like it sends a message and it gets them their asset back.
Yeah, that's quite possible. And it would become very hard if that is true. It would become very hard for Chinese now, since they would evacuate. But the consulate still, even if they evacuate, the consulate still remains the territory of China, right? So therefore, the FBI cannot enter into conflict in that case also.
Well, you are the diplomat. I can only guess.
And the skeleton staff could still be there, which would be a local staff of United States. They could still be there, but they would not, according to the Geneva Convention 1963, they cannot still enter unless they degrade the status of the mission. If they do that, then China would also do that.
Okay, degrade US can degrade the status of the mission. So,
no.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, on the last comment on the Chinese, we all know like US markets are flooded with Chinese products, and China buys a lot of US debt. So that's how this relationship is going. How far it can go, we know it will not go far, but this divorce will be really painful for US and China. That's what we can only say, and it's already happening. So coming back to the same region where Turkey, Syria lies, we have seen the sign that Syria is being fully supported by Russia. And that battleground since 2011 has been almost 10 years, has been a lot of blood shed, which is pretty nonsense in the civil war in Syria. of innocent people have been shed. But nobody seems to get a grip of it, that who wants what. We all know that Bashar al-Assad wants to stay there in power. Russia wants to keep him there. It is also confusing, like why it's not confusing, but confusing for the normal person at the gist of it, that why Russia wants to keep Bashar al-Assad in power and why NATO wants him gone along with US. So do you think this battleground with Turkish alliance, more toward Turkish leaning more towards Russia and having more leverage over NATO with its new found sea routes from Mediterranean to Black Sea along Bosphorus, this region heating up further to a point that Russia and maybe to China to an extent on one side, and West and US on the other side, having hot proxy wars between different states, with the Iran already in there with its military boots on ground in Syria. So do you think this whole region is boiling towards another war in coming future, as 5 years, 3 years? I cannot put a number on that. So do you think there will be further escalation of hostilities and wars in Middle East originating from Syria and surrounding countries?
If Israel is not threatened in this region, particularly with the presence of Russia, Israel should not feel threatened at all. And Russia is a fulcrum, to my analysis and understanding, between Israel and any harm to Israel by Iranian-backed guards and other people. So although you will not find that in literature, but that you have to really connect the dots by reading so many things and by observing. And since I have a first-hand information of certain things by being in that region as an ambassador and as a country head of the United Nations, so I can read between the line that that Russia has gained its influence. That means the allies would automatically have the fruits of it and the benefits. And who are the allies? Of course, Russia, China, all the countries included in ECO, which is Iran is a member, Turkey is a member of ECO, Economic Cooperation Organization, and SCO. So from that angle, why US, which is being criticized, the leadership is being criticized that they are receding their power in Syria. You are very right. It was a proxy war there. Why that was a proxy war there? Because Syria is a buffer zone between Israel, and Syria is a buffer zone between the Iraq and also Lebanon. That means a free access to Mediterranean Sea. Mediterranean Sea means Europe, all right? And the dominance and the influence of the region, influence of the allies, Russian warship for the first time was seen in the Mediterranean Sea on the ports of Lebanon. This is the first time that Iran has a free access, in a convoy or whatever way they want from their country right up to Lebanon and the Mediterranean Sea. Likewise, the Russians. So they have gained quite a bit of influence in that territory and the territorial dominance without threatening, because of Russia, without threatening Israel, because Russian foreign minister, Russian president, they are in direct communication with Israel. So Israel at this point in time, the whatever little comfort level they have, to my understanding and my analysis, it's basically because of Russia. And it is kind of a stability in the entire region, because Iran would not be taken as a direct threat to Israel unless Israel attacks directly, which again would be neutralized with the diplomatic presence of Russians. So so far as war is concerned, I don't foresee that there could be some small, like, shooting down one aircraft or shooting down the other aircraft, and some skirmishes and proxy war. Proxy war, that seems that it's still not resolved. And various factors, Gulf countries, United States support, sometime full support with weapon and
yeah, that's what we expect. So that's what my question is. Do you think proxy war heating up, proxy war which are direct backing of allies like Kurdish are directly backed by US and Israel. There are other factions. There's a jambalaya of names of organization, which can be Al-Nusra is one of them. So we keep hearing every
Offshoot
other
of
day.
Al-Nusra is offshoot of Al-Qaeda.
Oh yeah, so I don't know whose terrorist is what in that. So we keep hearing jambalaya names of organizations which are basically formed by some by some third-party client country
And supported by so
and
many
supported by
countries.
those countries. So they just give them a name and throw them in the field. So do you think that proxy wars heating up to a greater degree where there is more?
In the present day Cold War, the proxy war would gain its importance, and that comes under fifth generation war. So that you are right would be heating up. I would definitely endorse that point.
And that will be expanding to the other countries like Lebanon, Jordan, to an extent Saudi Arabia as well.
Absolutely, that could be extended. Yeah.
So yeah, so there's the more proxy wars coming to the Middle East seems to be our next prediction.
Proxy war coupled with the other components of fifth generation.
Of course, the proxy at the back of every proxy war there's somebody, right? So there's no proxy war have been without alliance.
So if the criminals do not leave the evidence, it becomes very difficult to catch them. So the other side also start taking countermeasures.
Yes,
through the same mechanism.
So now we'll have a complete topic on next week on US presidential elections, but I just wanted to, before we close, touch down on the difference of the world in a few sentences as a synopsis or preparation for our next show next week. Is how do you see the Middle East different? Especially in Middle East, Syria, and those conflicts, difference between Biden policy and Trump policy, because Biden and Trump represent different establishment and different mindset for the future of United States. So, do you see as a different future for the Middle East if Biden is the president in context of the Syria conflict? If Biden is the president or the Trump is the president?
I would see the tension reducing. I would see that nuclear accord, which has been scrapped by Joe Biden, that could again be restored because all the European countries, the other, that was P5+1, Germany and P5 countries, they were the guarantor of
you're talking about Iran
nuclear accord.
Iran nuclear accord, which was scrapped by Trump. Yeah.
That is linked with the Gulf countries and Israel. That's why I mentioned that. So to that extent, that would mellow down. It can be restored because there is a pressure of European Union. That means if that is restored, that means the economy would become better, and Chinese would find it much easier to implement $400 billion agreement, which then the Americans' financial institutions and financial system would not really block that. So that's one part. But the second part is Israel. Israel would have the objection to restoring the Israel.
Yeah, that's good.
So you can just conclude.
You think if Joe Biden is able to become U.S. president, he will restore U.S. and West nuclear deal with Iran, and that will reduce the tension in the Middle East, and that would reduce the proxy wars, the heatedness in the proxy wars as well, which was fought with through different proxies as well, or
right. The proxy war basically is not going to stop by this. Yes, the very heat might as it be reduced a little bit, because if Joe Biden restores, which he would have the pressure of the European Union to do it, because European Union have billions of euros investment in Iran. They had, and they had to be disrupted because of the sanctions. So to that extent, I can find that Joe Biden. But otherwise, Israel would not be very happy. It all depends what way they are going to handle Israel. And secondly, And secondly, it's very hard for any presidential candidate to annoy Israel and the committees and community there in United States for it. That's one aspect. But secondly, the most important thing is the foreign policy of United States by far maintains its trajectory, except for the modality changes, the very snobbish modality to a softer modality, which is required in diplomacy. That's what my take is. Yes.
Okay. So in conclusion, in the end, it seems like if the United States keeps its trajectory, then Biden will not restore the Iran nuclear deal, because right now US has already set up its trajectory to be against, to keep the sanctions and pressure on Iran through sanctions. So that trajectory is expected more likely to continue with the China in the context, or you still think that Biden will able to remove?
He will have because that was the brainchild and the baby of Obama administration and Obama himself, and Joe Biden was vice president. So, and then he has the pressure of the European Union members, not European Union, the members, the other 5 members of the accord, other 5 members of the deal, that it should be restored, because not only because of their investment, but the understanding among the senior countries and the other countries who are involved in this deal, that if Iran is stopped, they'll be able to develop the nuclear weapon. And if Iran remains under the deal, then the inspectors of the Atomic Energy Organization, they would be able to inspect every now and then, and they would be under check not to develpoint the weapon.
Well,
so
on the campaign trail, Joe Biden has not used it as a point scoring for so far. So it sounds like he will be afraid to restore the deal, because he's not trying to beat Trump, because he will look bad if he does that. So,
as I said, any presidential candidate for that matter cannot annoy Israel during the period of their campaign.
Okay. Sounds good. So we will conclude over here, and thanks for your time, and thanks for all of our viewers worldwide for their time, and thanks once again, Dr. Jamil Ahmed Khan, for all your analysis and expertise on our show. We will see you again next week in our show, What Will Happen. Until then, stay tuned.